I've said this so many times. If your expectations are off, you are going to convince yourself you're doing something wrong. And believe it or not, you might actually be ahead of the curve. You just don't feel like it. And that is one of the reasons so many podcasters call it quits when they don't have to. Podcast Growth Nation, today for episode number 159, the top 5 conversion rates podcasters get wrong and why they matter. So I did a bunch of research. I'm just going to jump right into it. I did a bunch of research and I'm trying to figure out what are the most common conversion rates that podcasters are looking to achieve, and then where do they go wrong, and then why does that happen? All I mean by a conversion rate is you send 10 messages to a potential guest, one person gets back. That is a 10% conversion rate. That's all I'm talking about in this episode. Nothing too crazy. We don't have to get too deep into numbers, but this is something that I think is going to be super helpful to each and every one of you. So I'm going to go through 5 of them. I will give you what the decent conversion rate is, and then we can see why we get stuck. All right. Number 1, listener to action. So I would say this is somebody who listens to your podcast that then does something free. This isn't to paid, this is to free. So the percentage of podcast listeners who actually take a specific call to action and then run with it. The average conversion rate, ready? 0.05% to 2%. So if you have 100 listens in an episode, that means an average number, a decent number, would be 2 people out of that 100. That's probably pretty high. 0.5% is a half a person. So let's do the math. If you have 50 people listening to each episode, I don't expect almost anybody to reach out. If you have 10,000, yeah, you're going to have people that reach out. But it's not what you think it is. It's not really what you think it is. Now, here's something you can do if you want, and you can do this for all of these. There's a bunch of places where you can make unique links, like Bitly. There's a bunch. Bitly is a very common one, and I think it's pretty cheap, all things considered. And you can set up different links for different places. So you could literally have a link to a PDF that you only talk about on the podcast, and then you have that link associated with the podcast show notes, and you'd actually be able to track how many people actually did it. So that is an example of, if you think, okay, I have 100 listens per episode, I should be getting 20, 30 people that reach out. That is unreasonably high conversion. That doesn't happen to almost anyone. We're talking 0.05% to 2%. And that is for something that is free. Okay? So that's 1, listener to action. Number 2, free call to paid client. Okay. I had a podcast breakthrough session with somebody the other day. They said they were a little bit down on themselves because they feel like they were struggling to get free calls that would eventually convert to clients. And they were telling me how, I've been doing it for a little bit and it just doesn't seem to be working. And I said, how many have you done? And they said, I've done 3 and nothing has come of it yet. And I said, brother, I mean this with all the love in the world. 3 is just not enough. You don't even know what you're doing yet. This is par for the course. We just got to keep that train rolling. So, free call to paid client. This is a free call that leads to somebody that is exchanging you money for value. Average conversion rate. And honestly, I ChatGPT'd all of this to try to get the best data I could. I think this is unreasonably high, 20 to 50%. I don't think it's that. I think it's probably 20 to 30% max. 50% is really high. I mean, if you're really good at sales and you're going through and thinking to yourself, okay, this person would make a really good client. I only take calls with people who I think will end up clients, maybe 50%, but that is really, really, really high. Really high. I would say 10 to 30% is probably reasonable. So out of every 10 calls you do, you might get 1 client. If you get 3 out of every 10, you're crushing it. But you can see how it eventually becomes a numbers game. So I would say 10 to 30%. I think 20 to 50% is honestly way too high and not realistic for most people. Okay. You've heard me say social media is about conversation, not conversion. So a DM to a client. Percentage of DM conversations that lead to paying clients. ChatGPT says 10 to 30%. I would say it's probably 10%. And it depends on how you're doing it. So it depends on how much you've talked to the person. Are you using voice notes? Are you using copy and paste messages? That all depends. We just filled our 19th round of group coaching, and it's the Podcast Accelerator. And I probably messaged, now we handpick the people. So even if we had 100 people reach out wanting to get in, we wouldn't just take the first 10. We handpick the people that we think will be the best fit. I probably sent, 35, 40 messages. And I think I ended up getting 7 of the 10 people to sign up or something like that. So do the math on that. What is that? It's not, 15, 30s. Might be like 12%. Might be 12%. You can do the math on that. And that's me, somebody who has a lot of credibility in podcasting. I know a lot of podcasters. And honestly, that's like pretty good. The fact that I only messaged 40 people and 7 of them signed up. And then Alan probably did. I don't think he messaged as many people as I did because I was more focused on figuring out who would be a good fit based on the conversations I've been having. But that's not a great percentage. That's not necessarily a great percentage. Let's just say it's 15%. Maybe not what you expect. Right? I think that's actually pretty good based on all the data that I have, but you might say, Kev, that's kind of garbage. It's like, all right, I understand, but that is kind of the way it goes. So that's DM to client. All right, number 4, podcast guest to paid opportunity. Whether I would consider this on either end. So whether you're a podcast guest or you have somebody on your show. So the percentage of podcast guests and or hosts that lead to some kind of business opportunity. Again, ChatGPT says 10 to 25%. I think that's high. I think it's probably 5 to 15%. And the reason is there has to be some level of follow-up. It's not just going to happen. It's not just going to happen. It doesn't work that way. That's where a lot of people are lying to you. A lot of podcast ads you see out there are talking about how your podcast should be the number one salesperson in your business and all this stuff. And it's just not. Yes, you can increase the conversion rates through the right calls to action, through the right messages. Yes. But it's always probably going to be lower than you want it to be. Because that just is human psychology. There's a reason there are averages for this. And if you do any email marketing, you can look. I mean, there's a ton of data based on email marketing. And it's just usually, if you send an email to 100 people and 50 of those people open it up, like you are above average. 50% open rate is really quite good. And then if you get 5% of those people to click something inside of the email, that is also really good. So break down the numbers. You have 100 people, 50 people open it, 2.5 people click it. Is that right? 10% would be 5, 5% would be 2.5. You can see how it just trickles down and it trickles down and it trickles down. So you're not necessarily doing anything wrong. This just might be par for the course. So podcast guest to paid opportunity, I think maybe 5 to 15%, but it really depends on what your follow-up is. You have to be following up with everybody if you want something to happen. One of the best, I would say the best speeches I've ever had, which was a free speech, was based on me reaching out to somebody and asking them a question. I just reached out to them to check in, ask them a question. Then they brought me in to speak, and we ended up getting one of our biggest client we ever had based on that speech. So even that speech was not paid, but opportunities came from that. But yeah, it's probably not as high a percentage as you think and or want. And then this is the one that I think so many people just get wildly incorrect. Listener to buyer. So going from a podcast listener to somebody who just purchases something from a call to action. ChatGPT says, and I think this is fairly accurate, average conversion rate 0.1% to 1%. So we're saying a tenth of a person to one person out of 100. So again, if you have 100 listeners, and I think it's closer to the 0.01%, depending on your audience, depending on your calls to action, that type of stuff.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
This is one of the reasons why I say if you are a solo, or if you want to do coaching, you having guest episodes is not necessarily going to help, because the call to action is not going to be very direct, and it's not going to be very suggestive, and it's not going to be very influential. If you have a guest on, you talk to that guest for 45 minutes, and then you have a call to action about your coaching, there's just not enough. You're going to be looking at 0.1% and lower. If you do an episode every week and you're trying to become the subject matter expert and you have a great call to action based on what you're doing from your episodes, yes, 1% is feasible. But it's most likely going to be just doing the reps over and over and over and over again. So those are the 5: listener to buyer, guest and or guest opportunity to paid opportunity, DM to client, free call to paid client, listener to action, free action. The goal is to increase these. And the only way to increase them is to push through the discomfort of them being super, super low in the beginning. And again, I'm somebody who in the very beginning, and not even in the very beginning, for a long period of time, I was freaking out about this because I thought we were doing something wrong. I thought we were doing something really wrong. And then I started to work with people. And then as I started to work with bigger channels and bigger podcasts, I realized, oh, interesting. This is just the way it goes. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I was talking to clients yesterday, and I made a spreadsheet for them for all their stats. And they said, hey, what is the percentage of people that are new subscribers that then download something from our free resources? And I said, it's roughly 10%. It's roughly 10%. And that's, all things considered, pretty high. Now, this is a successful channel, so they have a lot of credibility and they have a lot of trust, but that's something. They did a webinar not long ago, 3 months ago maybe, and I think they had 1,000 people sign up, 300 people showed up, and then out of those 300 people that showed up, I think they got 20 people to sign up. So if you, again, just run those numbers, that is common. It's not what most people think. I don't know if you know who Brendon Burchard is. Brendon Burchard is pretty big in the personal development space. In 2018 or 2019, we got free tickets to one of his events. Not because we're anything special, because he was struggling to fill his event of 3,000 people. Even though he has 1 million Instagram followers and however many people watching his stuff, it's just a conversion rate thing. Taylor Swift can sell out arenas, yes. And many people can sell out arenas, yes. But it takes them a long time to get there. And their conversion rate increases because they become more successful and more popular and all that stuff. But I don't know. I think it would be really hard. Like, imagine if I was to Google what is the most successful concert of all time, I think it's probably, in terms of in-person, probably like in the millions. I'm pretty sure Live Aid, the one where Queen and all those bands played for, I think it was in England in like the 80s or early 90s. I don't remember when it was, but I'm pretty sure that was seen by like 1 billion people across the world on television. That is insane. I mean, that's like 1/7 of the population. That is insane, but not everybody was in person. Not everybody had to take a call to action necessarily, right? So I don't know if you said how many seats could Taylor Swift sell right now, how many would it be? out of the however many 100 million people that follow her on Spotify, I don't think it would be a drastically massive conversion rate. If, let's say, 200 million people follow her on Spotify, and I don't know what the number is, and she sells 200,000 seats, what is that? That's what? 1%? Right? Yeah, I think that's 1%. That's what we're talking about here today. Even if she was to do like 2% or 5%, those are above average numbers, but it might not be what you expect. I can't imagine if there was an infinite stadium that Taylor Swift could put 100 million people in there. I cannot imagine it. So conversion rates are something that everybody is dealing with. And everybody is testing this. When people run ads at the Super Bowl, they're figuring out whether or not it's actually going to convert enough for them to invest the money. And this is just super common. And everybody is dealing with this. And my ultimate point in this episode and my ultimate goal is for you to know that you're not alone. If you're a coach and you're getting 10 free calls per month with potential clients and you're getting 3 new clients a month, you're doing pretty freaking well. Especially if you're just doing free calls to add value and then clients come out of it. If you're somebody who's reverse engineering every single call and only doing them if they're a warm lead, yes, 50% of the time is reasonable. But that's not the way most of you are probably going to do it. That's not the way I do it. If I only did podcast breakthrough sessions based on people that I thought would be clients, I would not have done 500 of them. Because a lot of these people didn't have podcasts yet, or I literally know that they're struggling financially. That's the reason I want to do the breakthrough session. So that's going to affect it. Your approach is going to affect your conversion rate, whether you know it or not. And this is why getting better at speaking and getting better at messaging, as I can't speak to save my life, is so important, because that is what's going to matter in the long run. Yes, AI can help you break your stuff up. Yes, all of that's fine. AI is not going to help your conversion rate. If anything, it's going to make it worse. So this is something that we have to level up as podcasters. So yes, those are the top 5 conversion rates and why they matter. And I think it's just one of those things where unless you've studied this ahead of time, which I didn't do, you just assume you're doing something wrong. And that's not true. If you're getting a 1% conversion rate, you're probably average. It's just 1% of 100 is far less in terms of results than 1% of a million. That's the part of it, right? That's really hard to understand. Okay, last thing. I don't know how many, we have over 1 million listens for Next Level You. And out of the 1 million listens, we have probably worked with, in some capacity, I would say 1,000 people. So if you run that number, I'm pretty sure that's 1%. It might be less than 1%. That is what I'm talking about. 1 million listens into 1,000 community members, hypothetically. Not a great number. But that is kind of the way it goes. I think that's actually 0.01%. So yeah, do the math on that. Again, the reason I want to do this episode is not to beat you up. I do not want to dissuade you from doing this. I just want you to have more accurate data. That's always the goal. Accuracy creates certainty, and it creates accurate expectations, and that is my goal for each and every one of you. All right, cool. If you are trying to figure out how to get your conversion rates up, or you don't even know how to start the process of figuring out what these steps are for you, I will have my link in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. And again, I'm not only doing them to work with people. Do I work with a lot of people who do breakthrough sessions with me? Yes. Is that always the goal? No. I'm not going to sell you on anything. I genuinely want to add value. If you ask me how much it costs, I will tell you how we can work together if that's something you want to do. But I want to add value, and I learned so much getting the opportunity to do that. We also have a free Facebook group called Podcast Growth Nation. We'll have the link in the show notes below for that as well. And I hope you are leaning into your calls to action and testing out to figure out what your actual conversion rate is. Numbers matter. Track the data. The data will help you. All right, cool. Until next week, keep on crushing it, keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you all